So last week we went over what it is to be anxiously attached, and this week in the second part of this series, we are going to go over what it is to be avoidant attached, how it develops as a child, how it manifests into your adulthood in relationships, and also, most importantly, how to heal from it. So as being avoidant attached, what do you think the actual correlation to their childhood is? How is it that it differs from being anxiously attached?
So I think the core of it is anxiously attached is rooted in deep insecurity and fear of abandonment, whereas avoidantly or dismissive attached, their core fear is being dependent. So they love their independence, they fear intimacy, and they don't like being close to others.
So is that because that the parents, and I assume it's from the caregivers, right?
Yes.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time. So you have these caregivers. Now, if the child is being neglected or unseen, unheard, is it a malicious intent done by the parents, or is it most of the time, and I will specify most of the time, done without ill intent? Is it just kind of a subconscious parenting method that maybe is conditioned onto them to how they were raised?
Well, most of the time, the parents of avoidantly attached are emotionally distant, so they lack in physical and emotional affection.
Right.
Or it's that authoritative parent, so very rigid boundaries. It's I'm the adult, you're the child, you have to do, what I say. And emotions weren't really welcomed within the household. So it was either seen as vulnerable or a weakness, or when the child did express the emotions, the parents didn't really tend to that. So they were probably physically there, providing them with food, clothing, shelter, all of that, but the emotional component was lacking.
So the emotional disassociation that they're experiencing then, do you think it just comes from the parents' inability without realizing of neglect? Maybe emotionally you have the maybe telling the child to be quiet so he's unheard or unseen, feeling unwanted, undeserving.
So I don't think it's unwanted or undeserving behavior. I think it's more, you toughen up, you'll get through this. You don't need to cry. Or if a child showed any sort of emotional distress, the parent might ignore because they don't know how to comfort. They don't know what to do. So they'll kind of leave the child crying. They don't really physically hug or nurture in that way. So it's more a situation where a parent may either feel uncomfortable themselves with giving the affection to the child, not knowing how to, feeling like they can kind of hands-off parenting, where if a child is uncomfortable or distressed, they'll just let them kind of cry it out, or they'll let them be upset, thinking that that will allow for them to become stronger. So it's a lot of this unintentional, distance. Or, the parent, like I said before, might not even know they're doing it because they don't know how to give physical or emotional affection.
Do you notice that it differentiates between male and female? So we have this world that we live in, right, where we were discussing, you have these young men that are told, pull yourself up by your bootstraps,
Yes.
Don't cry, don't show emotion, be tough, boys don't cry, so on and so forth. Do you think that there's a majority of men that are avoidant attached, comparatively speaking, to women? Do you notice that maybe the women are a bit more anxiously attached while men are more avoidant attached?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's due to also societal pressures, right? Like we talked about earlier. I think, in this day and age and throughout all time, men have been conditioned to not show their emotions and to suppress it, because that's not manly to be able to cry. That's not manly to be upset, right? You kind of just have to figure it out. So most of the time, men predominantly do develop this attachment style because they're taught at a young age, you need to suppress. You can't allow for your emotions to be a burden to someone else. So you learn to self-soothe and rely on yourself to really figure out and process your emotions.
So what are the self-soothing techniques, though, that you think a young man would use, or even a woman? Like, is it just kind of sitting with themselves and being like, I can handle this, I can do this on my own, I don't need anybody? Would you consider that more of a self-soothe?
The self-soothing techniques vary depending on, what sticks for someone. So it's going to look different across the board. There's no one size fits all for that.
Recipe.
It's just a generalization of people. The children learn as young as before they're 2 to self-soothe and rely on themselves because no one else is coming to save them when it comes to their emotional distress. So they have to learn to maybe, engage in an activity, in a hobby. Maybe they kind of figured out that listening to music as they grew up kind of calmed them down, or just removing themselves from the situation.
Okay.
But there's many different outlets that people have, but they learn to not put their emotions on anyone else because they feel like it's a burden. And they feel that the second that they open that door, they're vulnerable and that makes them weak. And also the physical symptoms of it, it really truly makes them uncomfortable to get to that place where they possibly have to be, emotionally out there.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that the parents typically are like the crucible to help developing an internal compass for a child to navigate relationships in their childhood and in their adult life.
Understand emotions and how to process them.
And if there's a disruption in their experience or in the moments of where they were supposed to feel loved to the point that they needed, what I'm hearing, it could make the child have an exceptionally difficult time with their vulnerability or feeling that they are accepting of love, or is it a reluctance to accept love?
I think that it's not really about love. It's about the inability of the parent to model to the child how to process emotions and how to deal with them and how to handle them. So I think it's more, if you're upset, if you're frustrated, if you're crying, that's not tended to. So it's not even that you need a parent to be loving in that moment. You need a parent to have like a teaching moment with you of like, okay, I understand you're upset and you're frustrated. Let's talk through this. Let's figure out why you're upset and pinpoint it. That's not happening in these households. So it's ignored, the emotions.
So does this then manifest into somebody being rigid or angry? Is there more of a avoidant style where it's more, since they haven't developed the coping mechanisms for, let's say, being frustrated, feeling angry, or anything like that? Does it typically lead to somebody being more angry, or maybe just a bit more dismissive and shut down and cold?
No, it tends to be, so this is all subconsciously happening.
Right, no, I understand
So
that.
this isn't someone intentionally trying to do, malintent on another person, but it's going to look more dismissive. So whenever there's an inkling of an emotional vulnerability.
So it's not like an eruption of emotional.
No.
Okay.
This is avoiding. This is removing yourself from the situation. So the second that, and we'll get more into this, the second that you have a person coming too close to you, too in your space, you physically can't handle it. It's too much for you. So what you'll do is, you'll withdraw, you'll dismiss, you'll shut down. And this isn't like gaslighting dismiss. This is actually like removing yourself from the situation. Or sometimes you have people who are avoidantly attached who, if someone's asking them way too much of them to handle, they'll just yes them because they don't want to go through the process of having to communicate and explain their boundary and how they feel.
Okay.
So any area of feeling or emotion that's strong and intense, they avoid.
Okay.
And it's not something that's, trying to be malicious. It's more, I can't handle this. This is way too much for me. This is a zone that I have no clue about. I need to kind of like.
So then I would assume that the relationship that they have with others is where the disconnect takes place. But I would also assume then that they would be maybe like a workaholic. So if they're super self-dependent and super self-sufficient, so they think, and they can't connect with others because of their inability to actually understand or want to understand their own emotional state, do they just revert inward and hyperfixate or become hypervigilant on other things going on in their life?
So avoidantly attached, how it manifests in adulthood. So as a child, like we said, you learn to rely on yourself. You're self-sufficient. Mm-hmm. You feel that having any sort of emotion is, a burden, is something that people don't really want to deal with, is a weakness, right? So you learn to become very independent. So as an adult, how this manifests is these people are very independent in terms of their day-to-day. They have very rigid boundaries and routines where they will not break them. They're very industrial. So most of the time they put all of their energy into the workplace. So they're very confident. They're usually leaders in the work field. People look to them for advice. They're very smart and career driven. They'll go towards jobs that are very highly challenging, very highly sought after. They like that challenge. So, their achievements and accolades become what makes them feel good. That's their fulfillment. Now, when you go to
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Do they thrive off external gratification subconsciously?
It's not about external.
Because I'm genuinely curious about that. Because you said that the perception or the accolades or the kudos that they're getting from an outside source is what makes them feel good. So do you think that the avoidant attached subconsciously maybe gets their rocks off through the external gratification and validation of what they're doing?
Well, it is a lot of I think it's self-fulfilling for them to be able to achieve in the workplace. Like, I don't think this is an external validation trying to achieve. I do think that's a component, just like it is for everyone. But I don't think, again, it's not rooted in this deep insecurity. And it is, but to a different degree. Right. It's not like I need to be loved and I'm worthy if I get these achievements and if I get this bonus or if I'm in this job, then people will love me. That's not that. They're thriving in that work environment because they fear intimacy. So their fulfillment is not in interpersonal relationships. Their fulfillment is in, that gratification of doing well in that environment of work. So it's just it's all they know, right? So it's not driven through insecurity of external. It's just the inability to connect with others and finding that area uncomfortable, so they go to the area that they are comfortable with. And work is, self-reliant.
It's something that they can control.
It's something they can control. And with control and with rigid boundaries equals self-regulation.
Right.
Right? So all of these things are their comfort. When they get into an area of uncomfortability, that's where they feel threatened. That's where their fight or flight goes on, just like anyone else.
So what does it look like within a relationship then?
So relationships and friendships are very superficial.
Right.
So avoidantly attached people, not to get it misconceptualized, they want closeness to others.
I'm glad you brought that up.
And the closeness that they know.
Right.
They want to have relationships. They're not trying to avoid a relationship as a whole, but they want it on,
their terms.
Their terms.
Right.
So these are the people who they want a relationship, but, they might just want to see you once every 2 weeks, right? They may not be comfortable having these deep conversations. If you're asking them, what they want, it takes them a lot longer to feel comfortable to really become exclusive with a person. So they're going to really need to see that you're going to align with my schedule and my routine for me to put you in. Because think about it. Routine equals control.
Correct.
Control equals self-regulation. So if you now have a person who's going to come into your life, your whole routine, how are you going to now wake up at 5 a.m., get your breakfast, go on your run, do all that? It becomes disrupted. So a lot of the times with relationships, it's a justification of like, oh, well, I'll just wait till I get like that raise, or, it's just not working for me right now. Like I have this to do, or, I have to achieve X, Y, Z. And you'll find that there are a lot of justifications for why they're not in relationships. And then when they are in a relationship, they do love it and they could really like the person, but they're very closed off because they don't know how to emotionally express. So this becomes a problem with the other partner, because now that partner looks at it as rejection. They look at it as being dismissive, intentionally. Yeah. And they're feeling now unloved because you're not getting that emotional fulfillment that you need.
Do you see, or do you notice that there is a link between a anxiously attached person typically picking avoidantly attached people?
An anxiously attached person typically, yes, because like we talked about in last episode, anxiously attached individuals crave that attention and feel like, love comes through earning it.
Right.
So they look at things as, if this is a chase, like I could fix them. And then it goes in this spiral and it actually clicks off. It becomes a very toxic cycle, because for the anxiously attached, it has them spiral in that rejection and fear of abandonment mode. And for the avoidantly attached, it has them spiraling because of the fear of intimacy.
Yep.
So
two people are on a hamster wheel just pulling the entire time.
Yes, they're triggers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the avoidantly attached is like, oh my gosh, like I can't do this. This is way overbearing for me. I don't know how to express my emotions. I don't know what I want. The anxiously attached is like, come closer. Why are you not texting me? Why don't you want to see me 4 days a week? So they're both, exhibiting these effects that are just going around in a circle and negatively impacting them both and reinforcing their beliefs.
Right.
Of what they feel.
So what is it then where the avoidant attached, if they really genuinely want a relationship, and like if I'm skipping around, tell me, but if they genuinely want a relationship and they have the desire to fit somebody into their schedule because they understand that they crave intimacy, they do want it, they do desire, they want love, they want to feel love, how does somebody then integrate that love into their life or integrate that friendship into their life without it disrupting the peace and that strict self-soothing regimen that they've then created?
I love this
question. Bang!
So their love just shows up differently.
Okay.
Their love is in that practical, logical sense. So if you're sick, they're great at tending to getting you medicine. Getting, acts of love is kind of their language. So their love shows up in different ways. Being able to help you kind of problem solve if you have an issue, right? They're great at that. So they come from more of that practical standpoint, but not that emotional support.
Right.
So a lot of the times with this,
high IQ, low EQ.
Yeah, their partner may feel like you're completely dismissing my emotional needs. You're just coming at this as a practical and logical approach. Like, okay, I'm sick and you got me my medicine, but maybe I just want like a hug and like a cute, nice message.
Right.
For them, they're showing up in the only way that they know how to. And with people who are avoidantly attached, they're more logical. They think from logic as opposed to emotion. So, they are showing up and they are fitting you into their schedule, but it's on their terms and all that they know, because they don't want you ever feel like they have to be dependent on someone or ever open that door for vulnerability. So it would look like if they do have a partner, it's like, okay, I could see you maybe like once every like 2 weeks or twice a week, and I have to do it after work and when it works best for me because I have a meeting or however it's structured. And if they're with a secure attached person, that will fly up until you start getting really integrated with one another, because eventually that secure individual is going to say, listen, like I need more from you than just a week, right? Like once a week. I need to be able to have you express how you're feeling. But with them, their boundaries are so rigid that most of the time they won't really get into a relationship because they are not going to break their ability to have that freedom to travel, for work maybe, to scale up in their career, to achieve what they know they need to for a partner.
Do you notice a cyclical behavior where it's kind of where an avoidant attached will be like, I really want this relationship, I want it to work, and they have this desire, almost like that immediate dopamine hit of what they want and crave, and then as soon as they get it, is there more of a pullback from it?
I think the original stages, like the first couple stages of a relationship for avoidantly attached individuals, is where they thrive the most because it doesn't get super deep yet. It's very much a superficial level, right? That honeymoon phase, you getting to know someone. But the second you start peeling that onion back and like now the relationship requires more time, more vulnerability, more willingness to open up, they start kind of feeling very uncomfortable.
Okay.
Or they'll remain at that surface level, right? And they could really like you. An avoidantly attached person can really, really like someone. But to the partner, it looks like, do you even care? Because they just do not open up. Same with friendships too. A lot of their friendships are on this superficial, baseline where they'll be with their friends, but they tend to like people who are also just as busy as them, right? Where they could see here and there. They are not open about, their emotions, their feelings, things of their life. It's very much like, what's going on? Do I even know this person?
Can you unpack for a second? Because I think some people listening might have a hard time differentiating and deciphering between being avoidant attached and then fearfully avoidant attached, just very quickly. So because I think some people might misconstrue that there's a fear of them opening up, and that they might feel that there's going to be hurt or some type of letdown that comes through from it. So is that the same as just being avoidant attached?
No. So that is fearful avoidant. That's exactly, you explained it perfectly.
Yeah.
And we'll touch on that next episode.
Okay.
Avoidant attached does not have any emotions tied to them being dismissive. They genuinely just don't know how to emotionally express, and it's uncomfortable for them. It's like weird. Like they don't think, oh my gosh, if I open up, like I could be hurt. They think this is weird. I'm going to be weak. I'm vulnerable. Like I'm good. They a lot of the times think I'm good. Like I don't need to talk about my emotions. Like I process it on my own time. I have the ability to handle it. And a lot of the times there's judgment that comes with people who are highly emotional to people who are avoidantly attached.
Right.
So they look at people who are very outwards with their emotions and they're like, all right, relax. Like you don't need to make it this big of a deal.
Well, don't you think again that kind of comes down to what they experienced as a child? Doesn't that isn't that more of that feedback loop then that they experienced? So they're kind of just reiterating the same parenting cycle.
It's as simple as just think of it like it's all you know.
Yeah.
You know, if all you know is that there's one color red, like that's all you know.
Red.
It's red.
Right.
So there's no emotional tie to this fear of intimacy. It's just, you know, they don't feel comfortable with it. So they just don't want to do it. It feels uncomfortable for them, right? It feels weak. It feels, you know, like I don't need to rely on anyone but myself. So it's more that, whereas the fearful avoidant is, you know, exactly what you described, where it could be stem from a possible fear of rejection. And that's why they're so hesitant to open up fully. And then they kind of scale back and dismiss and avoid.
We're talking a lot about the caregivers, right? And how this kind of manifests in childhood from the home. But I would also assume then, even if somebody has a beautiful household with a super affectionate, loving set of parents, it is still possible to become avoidant attached outside of the home in the caregiver's presence, though, correct? So based off of societal norms, societal expectations, things like that, right?
Yeah, you could definitely develop, you know, a fear of intimacy or an inability to express your emotions through society. And I look at that as like, think of men. Where they're taught from a very young age to suppress their emotions and that boys don't show feelings. So you could very well develop a sense of emotional inability and, you know, not being able to express the way that you would like to because of that societal norm.
Right.
So that could definitely create that. Also, going back to the parents, I just want to reiterate too, affection and, you know, physical affection and emotions were not shown at all in the house most of the time. So can we give the listeners an example then? So I'm a young man. Okay.
I'm outside.
You're outside.
I'm outside.
You're outside.
Okay. Catch me outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then let's say I wind up falling down, scraping my knee, and I'm 4. And the first thing I want to do is run to my parents. And I just want to be held or coddled or just whatever to make me feel better in the moment. What is it that the parent would do in that situation then that would wind up eliciting a certain reaction of avoidance in my older years? What is something that I would have to repeatedly be immersed in from my parents' behaviors?
I think a perfect one would be the hands-off parent. The parent who would see you come in distressed with your knee scraped and say, "You're right, Ian. Don't worry. Just like, you know, it's fine. You'll be okay. Just a scrape."
But what do you say then to the parents? Because I have a niece, right? And when she falls, I clap. And I'm like, yay, because I see that she will start to cry right away. And it's not that I'm dismissing her emotions. I just remember being a child and like seeing a bee and watching my mother frantically run from the bee with her hands in the air. And then I imitated that because all I knew was to run from a bee.
Right.
So where's the fine line there? You know what I'm saying? Because what if the intention behind, and again, she's loved unconditionally regardless, but in certain ways where maybe she might need to be held, I'm sitting there like, great job. Fall again. Like that's what life is about. Life is pain.
Right. So this is almost where this gets elicited unintentionally, where it's praised and they're coddled and given affection in the positive emotions, but when the negative emotions come, it's like strengthen up, like figure it out.
Okay.
So it has to be an equilibrium. Oh my gosh.
Equilibrium?
Yes. Wow. That was a tongue twister that I was not seeing coming, that I did not see coming. Okay. So there has to be a fair balance between praising and giving love and affection to the positive while also the negative. It can't just be like one side, right? Because yes, it is life and they're going to experience, you know, a wide range of different feelings and emotions, but they also need to learn how to emotionally express that, navigate it, and be able to rely sometimes on others and feel like it's okay to be safe and vulnerable.
Okay.
So does that make that answer your question? It makes
perfect sense. So how does, and again, if I'm jumping around, let me know, but how does one then, so we are obviously looking, the avoidant attached is looking as emotions and being vulnerable as a sign of weakness.
Yes.
Right. So, and it's not a sign of weakness with malice, right? It's just weak. It's just all they know.
Just like, I'm not doing
I'm not about that life.
Yeah, I'm good.
So what can an individual do then if they have this preconceived notion and this disposition that vulnerability is weak? How does one then become vulnerable? Because the whole point about being vulnerable is that it's not weak. It's one of the strongest things that you can be. It allows you to trust where you once relied to. It allows you to love where you were once hurt. It allows you to heal in places that you once died. Like, vulnerability is the crucible of how to actually grow.
It is.
So how does one then develop a sense of vulnerability?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. The most important part of this is first becoming in tune with your emotions.
Okay.
Because people who are avoidantly attached are disassociated, right? They don't recognize even what they're feeling. These strong, big emotions just don't click to them. They can't express it. So
can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
So they can't express it, but do they feel it?
Yeah. So it's like a tsunami hit you,
That's
right?
what I want to know.
So it happens and you're feeling so uncomfortable that you just want to run from it and you're like, I'm good.
The ick.
Yeah.
You get the ick.
Or you'll scale back when you start to feel this and kind of like go into your own space, right?
Okay.
So they'll feel it, but they'll self-soothe on their own. So like we said before, you know, maybe that will be engaging in work more. Maybe that'll be, you know, going and playing tennis or baseball or, you know, enjoying their hobby. So they'll kind of self-soothe however they know how to on their own and process it. Because like I've been saying, it's a burden they feel to open up about their feelings to others. They don't want to have to rely on someone to help them. They don't think that that's necessary. So going back really quickly, and I'll go back to your question, with partners, they always seek someone who's also as independent as them too. They try to, because they want to make sure that this person has their own individuality like me. They have their own schedule like me. And I need to know that this is going to work for our collaboration together as like intimate partners.
But then I asked you before if you noticed that the anxiously attached will normally...
Anxiously attached.
Right, but the anxiously attached will normally date an avoidant attached.
Well, they're more attracted to.
Well, they're more attracted to the trauma response that they have, I assume, as being anxiously attached, which is why that level of discomfort is comfortable for them. But do you see the avoidant attached sourcing out anxious because they want to be able to feel some level of emotion, and maybe the enticement or the excitement of that emotionality might be arousing at first, or do they typically go for another avoidant attached style?
I think most of the time they honestly remain single.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And if they're in a relationship and if it is someone who's anxiously attached and they're triggering, you know, those areas for them, they'll end up leaving or they'll be in it for a short amount of time. But it really depends. Like anxiously attached individuals seek that, you know, almost avoidant behavior through a trauma response. Right. You know, well, not even trauma response, just through,
it's a conditioned
through their
thought
norm.
pattern. It's what they're comfortable with. The discomfort is comfort.
Yes. Avoidantly attached, you know, it's interesting. I don't think we talked about this yet. They really deem themselves as being secure.
Okay.
They think they're securely attached. They think, I have it figured out. I have my career. I have my, you know, my house, I have my finances in order. All of this is stable. So this is me kind of going through my everyday, functioning properly, being able to process my emotions. It's just other people who don't really have it all figured out yet.
Yeah, and that's a good point to make, but the avoidant attached realistically does not know how to process their emotions. Correct?
No, but they feel like they're secure because, they have everything kind of figured out in a lot of different areas of success.
Yeah.
Right? Financially, career, that when it comes to emotions, since they've never learned how to express them, they take it as, that's fine. People don't need to process it. You don't need to sit with someone and be upset forever. Like, they feel uncomfortable when people even cry. Like, it's so funny because when you see an avoidantly attached versus an anxiously attached, if someone's crying, the anxiously attached is going to be like, oh my gosh, like, come here. I love you.
You can read
what
it on the avoidance face.
The avoidantly attached, they're not making eye contact. They're like, I got to go. Like, I don't know what's happening here. They don't even understand why the person's crying. They're like, it's really not that big of a deal. Like, it'll be okay. Like, figure it out. The words they can't even get out to soothe this other person.
Right.
And you could really differentiate between the two just by putting them in a room with someone who's distressed, because you could see real quick where someone falls.
I would love to see this happen.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And it goes back to the strange situation, that study of Mary Ainsworth, where I spoke about in the first episode, where these babies, when the parents would leave the room, they had little to no distress. They didn't even notice. They were still playing with their blocks, doing whatever they were doing. A stranger would come in. They have no indifference to the stranger versus the caregiver. So they will act exactly the same most of the time. Caregiver arrives, they're just avoiding and just focusing more on their environmental as opposed to seeking comfort, which shows that they have little reliance on emotional support, right? So they don't need that. And in this study, as babies, they were showing it. So
let me ask that, right? So you have a group of babies. Okay?
Group of babies.
Now, would you be able to pick apart, just as a psychologist, which ones are anxiously attached and which ones are avoidant, just by looking at how they're operating and conducting themselves in a room?
Yeah, I mean,
would the avoidants typically be in their own private circle, playing with their own toys, while the anxiously are probably crying at the door or asking where's mom and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely signs, and it's a lot more complex than just that.
I'm generalizing.
So for that study, like, mainly the characteristics were baby was extremely distressed when mom left the room and came back for anxiously attached, avoidantly attached, little to no distress.
Yeah.
And showed the same amount of emotion to the stranger as the mom.
Okay, got it.
So, yeah, even before the age of 2, babies could, you see this in them, which is very interesting. And it really goes back to, like, you are modeled and shaped through your experiences.
Yeah, big time.
And if, like we talked about in the trauma episode of, abnormal childhood environments, you don't know any different at the time. So trauma, abuse, neglect, these are not often red flags until you become an adult, because your everyday norm is in that, household. You don't have anything to differentiate it from. So with this, same thing. If you as a child are not getting any physical or emotional affection and being dismissed when you are experiencing negative emotions, your parents not soothing you, they're not coddling you, they're not trying to talk to you about these feelings, they're not opening up about feelings with you and, teaching you, all you're going to know is to rely on yourself and that you're self-sufficient.
So that leads me then to that. Do you remember the original question?
Yes, of how do people recognize?
Well, how do people recognize when they have gone their entire life not being able to recognize what it is that they're feeling, when they have traversed this entire plane of existence of just kind of existing within their own element and avoiding their emotions and ignoring what it is that they're feeling and burying it down, even when it does bottle, suppressing when it does bottle to the surface. So how does somebody become familiar to understand, or even develop the desire to want to understand?
I think first step before anything recognize in yourself, is it uncomfortable when people try to open you up, when you're going deep with a person? Do you feel, a strong sense of urgency to have to leave or remove yourself when someone's, trying to ask you what you want, how you're feeling? Is it hard for you to even have those conversations?
Right.
Of emotion? Like, where are your values? Are your values in, accolades, achievements, career driven and focused? Or do you really care about interpersonal relationships and friendships? And you could care about them, but are you going deep with them?
Right.
Do you want to know about, your friend's childhood experience? Do you want to know about your boyfriend or girlfriend's past? Are you able to see people cry and be able to tend to them? Do you have that empathy to even understand why they're upset? Or do you look at emotions, negative ones, as a sign of weakness? Do you look at people and judge if you see them becoming highly, emotionally sensitized, like desensitized? Do you look at people and feel like they're way too highly sensitive, right?
Right.
You have to kind of look and see, do you come from more of a place of judgment with these emotions, or do you come more from a place of empathy and understanding and openness? Okay. I feel like that's like first.
Okay.
You could easily.
So analyze judgment versus compassion while dissecting your own internal dialogue when you're in situations that initially make you uncomfortable.
Analyze your relationships as a whole.
Yeah.
Like, what really is this to me?
And when you say relationships, that also involves... Hold on. Because we have relationships in general. We have the relationships to loved ones. We have relationships to family. We have relationships to friendships. We have relationships to work.
Right.
And then we have relationship to self.
Yeah.
So is it about acknowledging all of those relationships, or should the avoidant attached start with maybe just looking at the external relationships that they have and see how it serves them? What would be an initial step?
I think external, because for avoidant, again, it's more this.
They think they got it figured out internally.
Yeah, it's more this.
Right.
And honestly, a lot of this, boundaries are great. Having a structure, there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. Being career driven is okay. So a lot of what the avoidantly attached individual kind of fills their bucket with are great things. It's just we need that balance, right? We need to be able to, yes, fill our bucket there, but also being able to connect interpersonally, because our main fulfillment in life, if you look at positive psychology and you really follow like human studies, is connection at the end of the day. That, starting to value your time with people and spending, not being so overconsumed and I have to go work, I have to go do this, I have to do X, Y, Z, and understanding that your schedule can be just you sitting with a friend or a loved one, and that could be more than enough for the day.
Right.
And then I think another really good factor of this is becoming emotionally in tuned. So tracking your emotions for like 30 days.
Okay.
Being able to recognize how you feel, looking at a feelings wheel, or any like emotional chart that they have online. They have so many, and being able to actually decipher like, how are you feeling? And writing it and expressing it. Starting to slowly open up to people. So allowing yourself to be a little bit more vulnerable,
Now, would that even be something as little as somebody being uncomfortable in a situation, just saying like, hey, I'm uncomfortable?
Yes.
Okay. So it
Starts
even
so
just
small.
like the trivial, most menial step forward.
Like, hey, I'm really feeling a little bit overwhelmed right now. Like, just start slowly opening the door to it, because what avoidantly attached individuals need to learn is how to become emotionally vulnerable. They need to practice this. Yeah. They need to practice empathy. They need to practice understanding. You can't have empathy if you don't understand your own emotions. Because how are you going to know what someone else is feeling? If you feel nothing, how do you know?
Well, it's like we said at the beginning. It's that emotional disconnect,
right.
That disassociative type mentality. And I think you said something which was super important about the fact that we just as people strive for connection.
Yes.
And I think one of the only ways that an avoidant attached individual can heal is by establishing a connection with another individual. I said this before at the beginning. It's about the co-regulation of the nervous system. It's
right.
about that synergistic energetic charge that you two create together. It's synchronizing in harmony. It's allowing the space and holding space for vulnerabilities to take place. And it's also mirroring each other's energy, which is super important.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think an avoidant attached will be able to heal unless they have a mirror to look at in their counterpart, whether it's a emotional relationship or a friendship to begin with.
Yeah. And again, they want to connect. They do, but on their own terms and how they know how to. So they're highly protective of their space and of their time. And they have a strong instinct to withdraw when that emotional connection gets way too deep. So the emotional connection is there for them, but they just need to learn how to unlock and open that door.
It's stripping the barriers and the walls that they've built, you know?
It's stripping it. And one last point I think we need to touch on is the difference between an avoidantly attached individual and like someone who's a narcissist or someone who intentionally is inflicting harm on a person. Because this gets very misconstrued.
I have to say something. What I've noticed is that a lot of individuals who are avoidant, a lot of the times get deemed and labeled as being a narcissist.
Yes. Yeah, because they're very confident. They're highly charming. You know, they do well with people wanting to be surrounded by them and in their life.
Right.
So, you know, but the difference is narcissists are developed through either being overly praised as a child or overly criticized. So they're either feeling like they're owed that validation through that praise, or this arrogancy and, you know, sense of needing to feel important. The entitlement is through a deep-rooted insecurity. So either end of the spectrum, this elicits a person who intentionally wants to manipulate, control, to feed their own ego and insecurity. So they're doing things intentionally and, you know, pushing and pulling with someone else because they feel good about it. And it gives them a sense of power, fulfillment, excitement, happiness. Like that's what drives them because they're so broken. Now with an avoidantly attached individual, they are not doing anything malicious. They just literally don't know how to emotionally express. So they're not trying to be distant. They're not playing a game.
Right.
They just are involved in their rigid boundaries, their schedule. They're going through their day to day. They don't yearn for that emotional connection at all hours or, you know, that check-in like a secure attached individual would need. They're just kind of like, all right, I'll get to it when I get to it. Like, it'll be okay. Like, so a lot of the times avoidantly attached will be in long distance relationships where they don't need to tend to that emotional need at all hours and times and physically be there all the time, right? It could be a phone call, a check-in, and that's okay for them. So they're doing this not to inflict any pain. They just feel uncomfortable with emotions.
What could somebody from the outside who's having a hard time showing discernment between someone who's a narcissist and someone who's avoidant, like what are there any telltale signs that someone would be able to pick apart? Because we've went over the narcissist episode. There's the gaslighting, there's the love bombing, the control, the things like that, right? So if someone's having a hard time understanding who's the person that they're friends with or that they're dating, is it a narcissist? Is it someone who's avoidantly attached? What should they look at to see what type of person they're currently actually with, friends with, dealing with? What are the signs?
I think for a narcissist, it's all the signs we've mentioned. Are they gaslighting you? Are they, you know, sitting there kind of trying to control you, telling you you can't do this, you can't do that? That's not going to happen with an avoidantly attached person. They're going to want you to have your independency. Yeah. They're going to want you to go do your thing.
Not to cut you off, but I've also noticed that love bombing gets misconstrued as independence. So somebody who's avoidantly attached will easily kind of walk away and remove themselves from a situation if they notice it's disrupting
their schedule,
their peace, their routine. And I think it's important for people to understand that that's not love bombing. That is just somebody feeling completely uncomfortable in the moment where they're starting to feel afflicted by what's happening externally, and they don't want it disrupted.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's another really good point. And with narcissists too, I mean, they're intentionally trying to do things to hurt you. So I think even just like the whole conflict aspect of it, like if you're fighting with a narcissist, I mean, they're going to throw everything back in your face. They're going to make you feel crazy. They're going to lie to you. They're going to manipulate, like all of these things that we have talked about. And avoidantly attached honestly might do really awful with a conflict. They don't even want to go there because they don't even want to elicit that.
Right.
You know, so a lot of the times it'll be like, listen, like, I'm sorry, like whatever. Like they're not scared to apologize or just kind of make things.
Yeah, I get that.
Right. Are they going to be expressive about it? Probably not. Are they going to really understand why their partner's kind of feeling this way? Probably not. But most of the time you're met with, I got it, like, my bad, like I was just really busy or I was working, and they're not doing things like behind your back.
Right.
Whereas I feel like a narcissist is kind of like scheming on the, you know, back end. They're doing things that they know aren't right. Like avoidantly attached is not doing that. There's no game playing there. But it seems like it.
So what is the one thing then that you can offer somebody who's trying to start their journey of maybe understanding their attachment style that is avoidantly attached? I know that you said get familiar with your emotions, put yourself in situations like that. What is something that they can just start doing today after listening to something like this, immediately after hearing this?
Reach out to a friend or a loved one.
Ooh. I
think. Spend time with those people who you care about and who you know care about you as well. Value, like I said earlier, the connection. And really, even if it's starting small, asking someone, hey, how was your day today?
Right.
That is more than enough to start. So I think, you know, simple.
Yeah. I think as soon as they understand the importance of the human connective state, I think it will wind up having them understand and heal a lot of what they've been burdened by that they're completely unconscious to. And it's not about taking a step forward and then taking 2 or 10 back. I think just having them take that initial step and just keep walking, even if there's hiccups in the road and these roadblocks that take place where they try and open up. Right. Well, the only way that you grow out of life is by taking a certain weight of discomfort.
Yeah.
You'll never grow if you're stagnant in a situation where you keep reverting back to your safety net.
Not at all. And I'm going to say something personal right now, just because I feel like this is an area that I connect with deeply. I was very, I think, avoidantly attached for a while within, you know, my relationships. And within the last couple of years, like, I've opened up immensely. And it at first was very uncomfortable, and, you know, my body did not want me to. It was like this strong urge of like, run, stop, like, this is weird, like, you're gonna be too vulnerable, like, people aren't gonna take it the right way.
So were you fearfully avoidant then more?
Yeah, but on the end of like expressing, like, I was more like avoidant, like, of just like, I don't want, you know, to do this at all. Like, this is not something that's like my norm. I don't really know how to. But, you know, as time went on and I opened up more and more and more, and this is for fearful as well, it could fall for dismissive or fearful. As you start to open up more and let people in and, you know, develop that connection, you start to yearn for it more. And you get this strong sense of comfort and safety and security through being able to just be human with all of the emotions you have and allow yourself to just kind of like flow through it, and know that people who love you and support you will be there, and they want you to open up, because with relationships, you need a deep relationship with another person. Like, you need to go deep with someone to really develop, you know.
But even branching off of that, you can only meet somebody at the depths that you meet yourself. So you have to get deeper in yourself, understand yourself first, and then be able to move along that plane of getting deeper with somebody else. But again, like we said before, you need that connection with another individual for that mirror, for that synchronization, for that open space to be held, for you to understand that your nervous system can co-regulate. You can feel calm in somebody else's energy.
Right.
You can feel seen and heard.
Yeah.
So that's the importance of that connective aspect.
Yeah.
Most important.
Totally. Agreed.
Okay. So
nice.
Next episode, which one are we doing?
Fearful avoidance.
We're going to go over fearful avoidance, which was my specialty for many years.
Yeah, well, that was mine too. That was my main. I just asked
you if it was fearful avoidance. You said more along the tail end of being emotionally uncomfortable.
Yes,
I was fearfully avoidant.
I more was fearfully avoidant than anything. I'm saying like I was avoidant in terms of, you know, when I had to express the emotion and like the oh my God, I cannot speak today.
I think she meant physicality.
Physicality, thank you. I can speak, like I promise you. It just sometimes when I'm here, I like trip up a little bit. But yes, like the physical sense of it all and kind of how I felt, you know, when I had to make that connection, there was like a roadblock.
You know, that wasn't me.
And it was like...
Mine was just more along the lines of just like, please, for the love of God, Ian, don't open up or you're going to get hurt again.
Oh, no, I would let someone in and then they'd get too close and I'd be like, oh, you got to pack my bags. Like, I'm not doing this. Nope. And it would be so uncomfortable for me. I'd be like, they love me too much or they're like too emotional for me. I don't know what to do with this. This is like a lot. And I would love the person and I would want them in my life, but I genuinely did not know like how to let them in and open up. And it would be such a strong sense of anxiety. No joke. Like it would be awful. So it's hard. And I know what people struggle with.
There you go.
I have since healed from that. I'm
proud of you. I can see that you healed from that. I'm
emotional.
proud of you.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of you.
Yeah. So that's my little story.
We'll be back with fearful attachment next time.
Yes.